Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu salamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran Udur, the jewels of the Quran and spirits. We have reached in our reading at the end of the last session. We ended with verse 87. That's the Imam Al-Ghazali's selection. Today we have verses 94 and 96 of Surah An-Nisa, the chapter on women. We read 94 and 95 and 96. That's basically probably the maximum that we'll cover today, inshallah. Still, it is still the same context that we in the ethics of war, you might say, as a theme. And after we read the these three verses, we will try to go back before 94 to pave the way, because there is a gap. We have about 6-7 verses that Imam Ghazali did not cover. Of course, these are selections anyhow, and in these readings we try to decipher as much as we can why Imam Ghazali chose these verses, since he did not have a commentary on why. So, أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ضربتم في سبيل الله فتبينوا ولا تقولوا لمن ألقى إليكم السلام لست مؤمنا تبتغون عرض الحياة الدنيا فعند الله مغانم كثيرة كذلك كنتم من قبل فمن الله عليكم فتبينوا إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. O believers, when you struggle in the cause of Allah, be sure of who you fight, and do not say to those who offer you greetings of peace, who offer you peace, you are no believer, seeking a fleeting worldly gain. Instead, Allah has infinite bounties in store, prepared for you. You were initially like them, then Allah blessed you with Islam, blessed you. So be sure, indeed, Allah is all aware of what you do. Verse 95. لا يستوي القاعدون المؤمنين غير أولي الضرر والمجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالهم وأنفسهم فضل الله المجاهدين بأموالهم وأنفسهم على القاعدين درجة وكلا وعد الله الحسنى وفضل الله المجاهدين على القاعدين أجرا عظيما. Those believers who stay at home, except those with valid excuses, we'll get into details inshallah, except with those with valid excuses, غير أولي الضرر, are not equal to those who strive in the cause of Allah with their wealth and their lives. Allah has elevated in rank those who strive with their wealth and their lives above those who stay behind, meaning with valid excuses. Allah has promised each a fine reward, but those who strive will receive a far better reward than others, far superior ranks, forgiveness and mercy from Him, and Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. Far superior ranks, درجات منه مغفرة ورحمة كالله غفور الرحيم. And this is 96. Now, going back simply to see what we have between 87 and 94. The verses talk about the hypocrites, 88, And these hypocrites want the Muslims to be in the same shoes like them. They don't want them to be the way they are. They don't want them to be believing Muslims, to be like them. And there is a prohibition about choosing them as allies, as and they need to migrate. This was when migration was uh, required after conquering conquering Mecca. Uh, though it is the Muslim army, but it was with no bloodshed, no more migration, no more hijrah. لا هجرة بعد الفتح. That's فتح Mecca. And there is a permission to fight those non-believers within that context, except that if they have a treaty. إلى الذين يصلون إلى قوم بينكم وبينهم ميثاق. If you have a treaty and it could be a truce like Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, the Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ, of course, the Muslims, they upheld the conditions, they fulfilled the conditions of Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, the truce of al-Hudaybiyah. It was Quraysh that and its allies that nullify the truce through killing Muslim tribes. That notion of a treaty, Muslims need to fulfill, they have to fulfill the treaty. It is in this context that if they refrain from fighting you, Muslims, and offer you peace, then Allah does not permit you to harm them. وَأَلْقُوا إِلَيْكُمُ السَّلَامَ. Peace. And I thought about the notion of the treaty. So we need to fulfill, as Muslims, the treaty with non-Muslims. How about it's the mithaq, an agreement, a treaty. When you become a member of the United Nations, you uphold international law, the Fourth Geneva Convention. So there are certain ethics that one need to fulfill. But that's, of course, it goes without saying. In fact, no country should be above international law, which we see nowadays. So Muslims need to fulfill the conditions of any treaty that they agree to. I'm choosing this as an opportunity. There is an agreement, there is a pledge, there is part of the faith, part of Islamic worldview, part of Islamic law. When we talk about the ethics of war, Muslims are prohibited against killing children. They are prohibited against killing women. They are prohibited against killing the elderly. They are prohibited against hurting those in their own monasteries, sawami'. So this is very important for us to. They are prohibited against, mutilation. They are prohibited against treachery. So they agree to something and they betray. They are prohibited. So there are ample texts, ample prophetic traditions, and also the like I can simply mention many of, in fact, of these traditions, and there are also things to be fulfilled before the fighting, in order to avoid fighting if it's possible. And one example includes a prophetic tradition narrated by Ibn Abbas, ultimately narrated by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. It includes the following text: لا تغدروا, do not betray, do not fulfill the agreements, do not ولا تغلوا ولا تمثلوا, do not mutilate, do not kill children, and neither those in their monasteries, what we call today. It doesn't have to be a monastery, it could be a church, it could be a place of worship. Anyone who betrays, is treacherous, then it is narrated in Al-Bukhari, in Sahih al-Bukhari, that on the Day of Judgment there will be a banner for him with which he will be known, anyone who is treacherous. Now, I know that people, and it's not hypothetical. When we talk about upholding the law, people would say, well, they, referring the non-Muslims, they do this and they do that. They will be held responsible. They'll be held responsible if it's not in the International Court of Justice or International Criminal Court or what have you. Everyone will be held responsible, held accountable on the Day of Judgment. You have a law that you cannot betray, that you cannot ignore, regardless of what other people do. There are stories that took place in the past where God knows who was behind. So we are not sure, since we did not see, would not witness who did whatever they did. There was a monk in Syria who is known to have went to convince some of these groups to release hostages, and he was taken hostage and was never seen thereafter. So Allahu A'lam. Most probably he was killed. Allahu A'lam whether they will show up after all these prisons were open. But regardless, I'm highlighting the issue because such people should be respected. Everyone who is protected. We will read about when Muslims also cross the red line, and they make the ultimate mistake of killing someone, Muslim, and sometimes non-Muslims. So here we have, this is still before 94, those who offer you, they refrain from fighting you and offer you peace, then Allah does not permit you to harm them. You will find, that's 91, you'll find others who wish to be safe from you and their own people. Yet they cannot resist the temptation of disbelief or hostility. If they do not keep away, offer you peace, or refrain from attacking you, then seize them and kill them. Wherever you find them, we have given you full permission over such people. This should be contextualized. This is during that particular period. There is no general permission to do that ongoing, because the very the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, when he concluded the truce of Hudaybiyah, he mentioned to his companions, who did not really like, they could have taken Mecca at the time, but he mentioned the reason that why he was going to accept when the delegation of the Meccans, the idol worshippers, the polytheists, when they were approaching, the Prophet ﷺ wanted on that day to preserve life. That's very important. And they were on the edge of Mecca, and they were powerful enough to take it by force. But the Prophet ﷺ did not want fighting to take place. As for the believers, it is not lawful for a believer to kill another except by mistake. This is why we have the story of the two children of Adam, Cain and Abel, if you will. It's as if the historian, there was no reason whatsoever. Of course, it's jealousy, it's envy, it's people make up stories. People make up stories. So a believer cannot kill another except by mistake. You say by mistake, you are working in building construction, and let's say that a block, a brick falls from someone's hand or from a crane and it kills someone. That's a mistake. If you speed, if basically if it's a street and it's where the speed is around 30 miles per hour and you go 100 and you kill a bystander, that's not really the same mistake. It's not intentional, but still not. The responsibility is different. This is why in certain countries it is considered vehicular homicide. It's kind of killing. So it is not lawful for a believer to kill another except by mistake, and whoever kills a believer unintentionally must free a believing slave and pay blood money to the victim's family, unless they waive it charitably. But if the victim is a believer from hostile people, then a believing slave must be freed. And if the victim is from people bound with you in a treaty, then blood money must be paid to the family along with freeing a believing slave. Those who are unable, let them fast 2 consecutive months as a means of repentance to Allah. And Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. One can see that systematically, freeing the slave. This is something that our religious studies teacher, Islamic studies teacher in in our high school in East Jerusalem. He entrenched in us, inculcated in us that Islam, from day one, it was by design ending this system of slavery slowly, one step at a time, but something that existed before. But killing someone deliberately, intentionally, ومن يقتل مؤمنا متعمدا فجزاؤه جهنم خالدا فيها وغضب الله عليه ولعنه وأعد له عذابا عظيما. And whoever kills a believer intentionally, their reward will be hell, where they will stay indefinitely. Allah will be displeased with them, condemn them, and will prepare for them a tremendous punishment. This sin, of course, if it's without repenting, but even then, they will eventually be taken out of hell. No Muslim will stay in hell forever. First of all, it is the first thing that people will be judged about on the day of judgment will be the blood, the sense of all those who killed, or that's the first thing that they will be held responsible for. But they will ultimately, if they have a grain, an atom of faith, they will be ultimately taken out of hell. It is the degree of sound traditions include tawatur. So you have multiple independent chains of narrators relating the same hadith, the same prophetic tradition. So we have hadith mutawatir that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that whoever has the weight of an atom of faith, من كان في قلبه أدنى مثقال ذرة من إيمان, he will be taken out of hellfire. This verse was amongst the verses that were revealed, and there was no abrogation of the verse. ما نسخها شيء. But of course, it is understood. Just think about the end of towards the end of Surah Al-Furqan. والذين لا يقتلون النفس التي حرم الله إلا بالحق ولا يزنون ومن يفعل ذلك يلقى أثاما يضاعف له العذاب يوم القيامة ويخلد فيه مهانا إلا من. So here we have mention of two grave sins, killing and adultery, but of course, except they will have severe punishment. يضاعف له العذاب, doubled, but it doesn't have to be only twice, except for those who repent. إلا من تاب وآمن, and they believe, وعمل صالحا, and they do good. Those people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive them, will change, not only will wipe their sins, but will turn them into good deeds. And this is the utmost generosity, subhanallah. So the killer, deliberately of course, has room for repentance between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. '94. Now we go back to all believers. When you struggle in the cause of Allah, this is ضربتم في سبيل الله. You this entails leaving Medina, for example, at the time, going to far places. Do not say, be sure of who you fight. فتبينوا فتثبتوا. I think there's a reading. Be sure of who you fight. Do not say to those who offer you greetings of peace, who offer you peace, you are not a believer. Remember that we do have prophetic traditions about spreading peace. Here, spreading the greeting of peace, of course. We have traditions that are narrated by Imam Muslim. You will not enter paradise until you believe. You will not be believers until you love each other. Don't I show you, don't I tell you about something that if you perform, you will love each other? أفشوا السلام بينكم. Spread peace amongst you. And in different tradition, do say, offer salam, a greeting of peace, to those that you know and those you do not know. So it's not only to your friends or your neighbors. You pass by people and you just simply greet them. And this is, the impact is wonderful. And there are etiquettes. The young should offer the older person should initiate the Assalamu alaikum. The rider should offer the one who is walking. So there are, one could figure out that and the best, if people have conflict, if they stop talking to each other, then they cannot basically go with this state forever. They have only 3 days for things to cool down, and the best of them, if we talk about two, is the one who initiates salam to the other. And if salam is genuine, imagine what will be the state of the society. In fact, if it's not genuine, Imam Al-Ghazali says elsewhere that if you ask someone about, like, how are you, and you don't mean it, you have lied to them. You have lied to them. The occasion for this verse is that obviously someone offered salam and he was killed. Now, who did it? There are different traditions about who did this. In the Sahih al-Bukhari, it is al-Miqdad, and the Prophet ﷺ told him, how could you kill someone who did bear witness to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? يا مقتاد قتلت رجلا يقول لا إله إلا الله فكيف لك بلا إله إلا الله غدا. And then this verse was revealed. Ya Miqdad, O Miqdad, you killed a man saying La ilaha illallah. How about when La ilaha illallah will show up tomorrow, meaning on the day of judgment? What will you do with La ilaha illallah when it shows up on the day of judgment? How could you basically defend yourself? In a different hadith, هل شققت عن قلبه? Did you look into his heart? Of course, this is not something that you can look. You cannot check the heart. You have to accept when people say that they are Muslims, then they are Muslims indeed. That's you might. It doesn't mean that you. If they say that they are Muslims, that you don't be naive in terms of what's next. I remember there was someone who became a Muslim. I'm not saying that there was anything wrong with the Islam of this person. In fact, I don't know this person. I know people from his community in a city in the West, and there were elections within a couple of days in the mosque, and he was elected on the board of that Islamic center. It was almost immediately. I think that's naivete, because you don't know whether this person became Muslim. Whether it was, of course, people in general, they are serious about it. Someone who does not know Islam yet, someone who does not know the community, someone who does not know the challenges that the community faces, etc. So you don't do that. At the same time, do not render people non-believers so that you will take their property. This is exactly what it is. Because it says here, تبتغون عرض الحياة الدنيا فعند الله مغانم كثيرة. Seeking a fleeting worldly gain. Compare this to the what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in store, the infinite bounties in store that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for the believers. You are no believer. People should be very cautious when people approach them and they try to trick them into saying something that 100% they will use to justify their behavior. If you are an imam, if you are a scholar, if you are whatever is your status in the community, if you are in a position where people do ask you questions about Islam, be careful. I know someone who tried to render his own nephews who live in the United States, he wanted to render them non-believers simply by saying that they do not know Islam, they were raised in a non-Muslim culture. He wanted to deprive them of their father's inheritance, meaning that the uncle would take the property. That's how far people would go. This is not common, but it could take place. Be careful about what you say. You were initially like them. So one day you were non-believers, next day you became believers. So be sure, indeed Allah is all aware of what you do. إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. Sa'id bin Jubair, rahimahullah, he was killed by Al-Hajjaj. That's a long story. But he said about this particular phrase at the end of this verse, this is تهديد ووعيد, this is a threat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is threatening the Muslims not to cross this line because simply of a fleeting worldly gain. Verse 95. Those believers who stay at home, except those with valid excuses. We do know that Ibn Maktoum who was blind wanted to be amongst those who have a higher status, because you talk about those who stay at home with valid excuse. Say somebody is temporarily sick, somebody is taking care of an elderly mother, for example. How about those who were like Ibn Maktoum? Then we have this revelation, غير أولي الضرر. So those who have a legitimate excuse, like being blind, meaning that they will also have a higher status. By the way, the Prophet ﷺ appointed the Ibn Maktoum, who was blind, as the governor of Medina when the Prophet ﷺ was outside of Medina. And radiallahu anh, at one point he did join the Muslim army in Iraq. He asked them to give him the banner. This is how people distinguish themselves in war, face to face then. And he told the Muslim community, the army, the commander, that because he was blind, he would not retreat, he would not desert the battleground. And he was martyred during that war, radiallahu anh. So even a blind person, his story is remarkable, really. And remember that the Abasa wa Tawalla, that surah is, Wallahu alam, is about Ibn Maktoum. And this is also a surah that speaks volumes about the right of needy or special needs people. The very last verse, 96, is it elaborates the al-ajr al-azim, the better reward, which is really superior ranks, forgiveness and mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from Him, and Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. Suffice, inshallah, for this session, and until the next one, which is verses 103 to 107, inshallah. Until then, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.